Kevin, I didn't get a chance to watch the game last night. I think Nick went 4 of 15. Jordan Walsh had 6 points, and then Anthony Black had a couple steals and a couple points. What were your impressions of the McDonald's All-Americans committed to Arkansas and signed with Arkansas last night?
Well, really it's a weekend. It's a weekend. They arrived during the weekend, so it's an extended weekend. Yeah, the game was Tuesday night, but, they're practicing in front of GMs and scouts, NBA folks. They had a scrimmage on Sunday. And so really the evaluation part has already actually been done mostly before they get to the game. So last night, you mentioned some of the stats. It wasn't Nick Smith's best shooting night. He did some good things out there, and you see his ability to cross over from playing the 1 to 2, and I think, that really stood out. Anthony Black really impressed me. Got a defensive rebound, started to push, threw over the defense in transition, perfect pass for a finish. He had 4 or 5 assists, probably could have doubled that. Guys didn't necessarily finish for the West. The West got beat pretty handily, and some of those guys didn't play up to their capabilities, but I thought Anthony Black hit another play where he scrapped for a 50-50 ball. In the same moment that he corralled possession, he whipped a pass to somebody. So you see the high IQ level of these guys when they play. But the reason I brought up the full weekend part of it is because I started getting text messages from an NBA scout, another person who was on hand involved in that event on Sunday, talking about how Nick Smith was the best player there effectively. And you heard last night when you heard Paul Biancardi with ESPN and the talk going on, you wouldn't have known that Nick Smith was 4 of 15 because they were talking about him as being among the top 2 players there when you start talking about the NBA draft and guys who really stood out over the weekend. So the game's fun. There's a lot of eyes on it because that's what everybody's paying attention to. But if you really think about it, almost like an NFL draft combine and then pro days and some of these things that lead up to the big moment, that's where the evaluations are done kind of last minute. And I think as these players now will be on campus, by the way, guys, at the end of May, early June, somewhere in that time frame, that's just around the corner. And so this was a big platform, but the platform really in front of the decision makers at the pro levels were actually playing out before the game played last night. I'm not saying they didn't pay attention to how guys played last night, but a lot of it was when it was less alley-oop dunks and bad defense and more about the grind of breakout sessions and guys really competing in front of scouts before they ever got to the McDonald's game.
Nick, Kevin, this could be just my guess, and it could be an uneducated or educated one. When I saw Anthony commit, the first thing I thought was, oh, that means JD is gone. And I know JD still has a decision to make. Maybe he's made it already. Maybe he's waiting to announce it. But with Anthony Black and Nick Smith Jr. coming in, do you expect JD Notae to play next year? Because I don't.
Yeah, I really felt like JD's probably moving on. I felt like that. I know Musselman, when asked in a recent press conference not that long ago, he basically said, they try to evaluate those things after the season. They want to do what's best for the players. But he also mentioned that guys coming back when they're not ready, that's something that they hope that players are paying attention to. And he referenced the Martin twins coming back. So, JD coming back, he's going to have to play a different role with the guys that are coming in. I mean, and I go back 2 years ago when Moses Moody was there, and you had a different type of roster in at least the top 6 rotation. You had Jalen Tate was the main facilitator. You had JD Notae in a 6-man role, played a lot of minutes. But there were times where his minutes were reduced based on what wasn't working with some of the stuff that he brings to the table because it's hit and miss with him. But on this roster, with this team this year, you had to live and die with it, and everything ran through him because you really didn't have a shot creator, and you really didn't have a pro-level scorer on that team. Stanley Moody really came around, but he wasn't a shot creator. He was a shot finisher, a guy that posted up one dribble, didn't really play on the ball a lot. So I think JD's role when you're bringing in guys like Anthony Black and Nick Smith, if he's coming back, I think there are other nuances to learning how to be an on-the-ball player that he'd have to, kind of reconfigure a role because I don't think he could play the way he did this year and Arkansas be at its best with a different type of look on that roster. But I think he's gone anyway. I think it's a moot point. I think he's going to seek pro opportunities and go to the next level. If I'm wrong about that, it is going to be interesting to see how these dynamics play out as Musselman molds and crafts what the next team looks like. And that starts in just, like I said, in a few months when these new guys get on campus. I mean, late May, early June, that's 2 clicks away.
And Kevin, one thing we know about Muss, he really prefers to play just 7 or 8 guys in a rotation. That seems like that's going to be a hard 8 guys, let's just say, to make. You may have a few others that get sparing minutes here along the way, but that's got to be in the back of the minds of some of those players that they kind of know how the calculus works with their head coach.
Yeah. I mean, if you really look at the minutes, some games it's 5 guys. It's usually 6. And there may be a 7th or 8th guy that check in. If you go back and look at the minutes, maybe they play 6 or 8 minutes. And when you recruit the number 2 recruit class in the country at a high school, 6 high school players, all of them top 100, 3 of them 5 stars. And we know Musselman keeps that rotation tight, and we know he likes veterans. We know that. He brings them in from the portal, and they play. So at least half of that 6 rotation is going to be probably veteran players, even if it's somebody coming back like a Devo Davis or Jalen Williams. So you're going to have some folks in that recruiting class. We can all talk about all the quality and all the depth possibilities, but Musselman doesn't coach that way. He doesn't run his program that way, and he's having success, so I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying there's a reality when the rubber meets the road. But I do expect, because I do think Musselman hesitates to get freshmen in too early. I do expect, because of the quality of guys like Nick Smith, Anthony Black, and Jordan Walsh, we're going to see at least 2 of those guys, I think, getting big opportunities like Moses Moody did from day one to be in that top 5. And I think the third, one of the 3, it may take them till mid-season like it did a Devo Davis and a Jalen Williams 2 years ago when they were freshmen. But I think those 3 guys at some point are going to rise to the forefront in that top rotation. It's going to be interesting to see what older guys are brought in the portal, who comes back, and how that all works out, because he's not going to play really more than 6. There'll be a 7th, 8th guy check in. Go back and look at the minutes. They won't play much, and no player's happy with that.
Yeah. Hey, we're very aware of the 3 McDonald's All-Americans that are coming to Arkansas. Most are aware of Khalil Ware in Oregon. Who are some of the other players that were in this event that maybe you've heard the names, but associate those back with some teams that Arkansas is going to face? How many McDonald's All-Americans will Arkansas see on their schedule next year that were showcased in this event as well, and that might be going to, say, other SEC teams?
Yeah, well, you've got a young man that didn't play last night, Jaden Bradley, who's injured. You've got the young man that played with Nick Smith Jr. That's going to Alabama, Miller, who's very athletic. He was a guy that was a top 10 5-star. He was actually ranked ahead of Nick Smith Jr. for quite a while until Nick really emerged, and it was impossible to keep him out of that top 5. Miller's really a top 15, top 20s kid. Brandon Miller, he's about 6'7", 6'8" kid with good athleticism. He showed well, by the way, during the weekend, even leading up to the game, and he's a guy that's going to Alabama. We know Alabama under Nate Oates has done a good job of recruiting, but that's just one name. You know, Duke loaded up in this class. It's the number 1 class. They're not on Arkansas' schedule. They made it to Arkansas' schedule, as everybody knows, in the Elite 8. But, you know, some of the Derek Lively from Duke was the number 1 player, 7'2" guy. There were times this weekend when Khalil Ware matched up well with him. I didn't think Khalil did as good a job in the McDonald's game last night in that matchup, but he had his moments. But, you know, the SEC always gets players, and there's always players that are in the McDonald's game, and the SEC is always kind of a back shelf high major program because everybody thinks of it as a football league. But the truth is they put a lot of players in the NBA draft, and the league's gotten better. It didn't show well in the NCAA tournament this year, aside from Arkansas. But I look, you know, with all these coaching changes, the league is serious about competing in basketball. And, you know, the McDonald's game will bear some of that out with some of this future talent.
Talking with Kevin McPherson here on the Morning Rush. Kevin, I know that you were one of the people to report about Ferdoz Armeek, and I'm just going to call him Big Naple because I know I probably butchered the crap out of his name. They had an interim visit with him last night. Have you heard an update on how that visit went?
Other than his excitement level, I'm putting some stuff together to put that out. I just know that he really likes Arkansas. Interest levels high. Interest levels high for him, though, with even the Blue Bloods. Kentucky's involved. As soon as he hit the portal, like 30-something schools got in there. Arkansas is obviously one of them. They don't waste time, even when they're busy still playing basketball. And John Calipari was at home, had plenty of time to pick up the phone, but Arkansas got in and got on his radar. He really likes the setup with the coaching staff. He went on and on about the coaches, how they're all great. And, you don't go and make a visit like that. You don't plan a trip and go see a guy unless there's mutual interest at a high level at this point. Because this transfer portal recruiting goes really fast, guys, and there's a lot of names flooding in there. So once you take the time to go back and forth, communicating on the phone, Twitter, Zoom, whatever, but once you go and make that physical in-person appearance, I think that means that there's some real interest both ways there.
We're going to see some moving parts as we saw yesterday with Chance Moore announcing he's going to enter the transfer portal. I tend to think there's going to be 2 or 3 Arkansas players that are currently on this roster that are no longer going to be, not just because they're moving on to maybe a professional, but potentially entering the transfer portal. Kevin, if you had to pick one guy outside of Chance that you expect to no longer be in a Razorback uniform next season, who would that be?
I mean, if he wants to play basketball, it's Conor Vanover. I mean, he's been at Arkansas for 3 years, and he had a sit-out year. He was able to produce more, play more in his first season, but that role diminished as Arkansas got into SEC play, and then once it got in the postseason, it was really, pretty much, non-existent. And then the start of the season, first game against Mercer, he does not play. Arkansas struggles. He starts against Gardner-Webb as his best game of the year, and then kind of fades after that. And we haven't seen Conor Vanover in a game, even in the couple of Arkansas's blowouts. They didn't have many toward the end of the year. We didn't see him, and so I think if he wants to play basketball, he's the next guy. He's one of the guys that I would expect to see in the portal. If he's happy and content in Arkansas and has good NIL deals and wants to be a part of that program, we may not see him in the portal. So it's predicated on, does he want to play college basketball? If he does, I think he has to leave Arkansas, and I think if he does, we'll see that name appear shortly.
And he's an in-state kid, and sometimes just being a part of this program and being a Razorback carries some value. But I would imagine from Muss's standpoint, he may not be able to contribute on the floor, but a practice player that can simulate some of the big men you see in the league, while that's not exactly how you want to be labeled or how you want to be talked about as a player, that does bring value to the preparation for a team that, we saw this year face Sheboy and Walker Kessler, and go down the list of the great big guys. He can at least simulate some of that in practice, I would assume.
Well, he's definitely a guy that he alters shots, and he can recover. His footwork's not great, but because of his length of, sometimes he can still alter shots. So there are things he can do to help Arkansas in practice. There's no doubt about it. The question is he content with that? Is he happy being a Razorback and playing that kind of role and just being a guy on the team that helps any way that he can without actually playing? Most players want to play, and it's no knock on him if he makes the decision to stay. I'm not going to say, well, that guy doesn't want to play. But he may have other priorities in helping the team any way he can without actually getting on the court during games is one way to do it, and I'd respect that. But I think if he wants to play in games, he's going to have to leave.
You just can't. It's hard to replicate 7'3", no matter what you do.
Absolutely.
Hey, last one, and we'll let you go. Expectations for next year. You've seen this level of talent at the McDonald's All-American game. You know what it means in the recruiting class. In your mind, your opinion, what is a reasonable expectation for next year's team?
Yeah, if you so much rides up to me on Jalen Williams coming back. And he's already getting some draft grades. He's one mock draft with USA Today has got him going 27th into first round. Jonathan Givony, who does a great job with NBA Draft Express and ESPN's got him at 45. That's mid-second round. I think he needs to put his name in the draft pool and at least test the waters, give himself room to come back. If you get Jalen Williams back and you've got Devo Davis in that mix, and with this freshman class that I know Musselman's going to pull at least 2 guys out of the portal that are quality, I think Arkansas should probably be have a legitimate chance, guys, at a top 5 preseason ranking based. If you look at the recruiting class and trust what he does in the portal, we don't know names yet from the portal, but he's going to get somebody. And I think he's proven now enough where people are going to take a look at that. You get Jalen Williams back and you've got Devo Davis plus those freshmen and whoever he gets out of the portal, that looks like a top 5 team to me based on track record the last 2 years, because we know even when Arkansas hit snags, by mid-January 2 years in a row, they've not only corrected that, there's been no roller coaster. They just win, and then they get in the NCAA tournament and they back it up.
Kevin, thank you. Stay safe in those storms out there this morning. We'll catch up soon.
Good to be with you guys. Thank you.
All right, Kevin McPherson joining us here.
Finally here, the top teams in college basketball have been determined, and the Final Four is set. Looking to wager on these games or the national championship? Head over to betonline.ag on your desktop or your mobile device and sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BLEAV to get started. That's BLEAV. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all your updated odds and info, along with player props and new contests throughout the year. It's the best source for all your sporting wagering needs, including live betting and everyone's favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so join today. Learn why everyone is saying BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.